Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we're joining this conversation. We pay our respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today.
But sometimes we get hurt, so we put little barriers so we don't get hurt. And the more we put barriers, the less we can feel the love, and the more barriers we put until we kind of cover ourselves. And then when we start to open up, there's this fear that if I take the barrier away, I'll feel the pain, because not feeling pain is closer to feeling love or closer to feeling something. But as you take them away, it's again this little warning beacon that exists at the top here that has only its main job is to tell us what could go wrong. The rest of us knows so much more, but it just continues to tell us. And if we listen to that, then we're caught in that spiral. But when you take it off, hey, this isn't that bad. Where can you put in a certain amount of effort to get the greatest benefit? So I came out going, where can I do something meaningful in the world while I'm still ensuring that I'm enjoying my life in a meaningful way? And I came up with doing the purpose chair, doing the warm data, doing the radical exchange, writing a book, and doing some workshops with my LOA that will
in
be
your
doing.
spare time, just in your spare time.
Well,
It's all
and every now and
all
then
very
I
good.
get a client and I earn a little bit of money, but most of the time I'm going, I'm sorry, I'm too busy to be able to do it. So I only take on 1 or 2 people at a time so that I can give them the attention they need.
And I think what's really interesting to me is that this just confirms for me that we are a multifaceted thing, as a human. And we can feel hope, joy, fear, and sadness all at the same time. It may be confusing, but we feel it. Your shadow side is part of you. Who you show yourself to be is part of you. And who you choose to be with those people is also part of you, and a choice that Good morning, afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to Pollination Media and to the Water Talks. We're very excited. We have got a wonderful guest to speak to today. His name is David Johnston. And David, hello, David. Welcome to the Water Talks.
Hi, Christine. Lovely to be with you.
And this is the lovely Danny Williams.
Hello.
Where are you coming to us from, Danny?
I'm in South Yarra today.
And what about you, David?
I'm not sure which land.
It's called Darkinjung land. So it's an area up on the Budai, around the Budai National Park area. And I live at Pretty Beach, which is very pretty.
Is it? I'll bet. It couldn't possibly be called Pretty Beach unless it was pretty.
Yeah. It's not the beach. It's the estuary side.
Oh, how wonderful.
Very close.
Yeah, we just heard the birds earlier for our audience. It was quite lovely. I'm coming from Bunurong country, and we're very excited to have a conversation with David for a whole range of reasons. I'm not going to give you his CV. We're just going to talk to you about how we met David.
Okay.
So both Danny and I met David at a summer gathering at Mossy Willow down on the Mornington Peninsula, where we were greeted by a whole new group of people from a cohort. We had all studied with this organisation, Small Giants, and we had done the MBE, and I think you had done it a few years prior to us. So we were very excited to have met you there, and you greeted us with this sunny smile and a lovely welcoming face and a willingness to connect with all of us. And it was new and it was exciting, and we were able to commune together down at Mossy Willow, where we learned a bit about meditation. We had some brave conversations. We were able to eat together, be merry together, sit around a fire together, to wander this most beautiful property that is loved by all. And I just knew that we would connect. I knew then that we would connect. And with Pollination Media, we've come together specifically to do that very thing, to connect with others, to come together and create a community within the community, because we feel really strongly that there's a lot of disconnect, a lot of silo living at the minute. And we'd like to actually bring the mycelium back. And the beginning of that is having our very first guest, David Johnston. Welcome.
Thank you. That was quite a build up to it. And yes, it was a wonderful experience meeting all of you and being from the cohort previously, and then
Yeah.
watching the new cohort kind of coming in, and all of a sudden was like, oh, this is so much fun. And it really was. And the thing that always excites me is that sense of connection that
Mm.
comes so naturally. And in a way, you bypass all of the how's the weather, is there any surf or whatever else? And it's like bang straight into, so how are you? Not how but what is this thing that is, bringing that joy into you, and that I don't know, for me, if I start to have other conversations, I feel like I'm not getting somewhere. These ones happen very easily. And that's why when you invited me, I was like, sure, an afternoon chatting about being joyful and, whether it's business or whatever else, they all come together.
That's so true. What we'd really love you to do is, for our listeners, we'd love you to tell us about you. We've got your CV. We know that you've been at Weleda. We know that you've done Go Vital. We know that you've worked with governments. We know about your journey-ish. But we'd be very, very keen to understand, because I think what you're saying is exactly right. It's to bring people into that space that is beyond what it is people see or can read on a CV or on a website. For us, it's about that wonderful, deep connection and the vulnerability that comes along with that. So we'd really love you to tell us, rather than us interview you hardcore, non-journalist people sitting in our homes and inviting you into ours. We're sitting around a table. Imagine that we've got a cup of tea. Imagine that we're sitting together, actually sitting together energetically. And we'd really love to hear about you.
Every time you start to go, well, who am I? You've got so many tangents that not only come in, but other ones that go off in other things as well. And I can go into, being born over there and coming over here and growing up. And, someone asked me recently in a podcast, so how did you get into this sense of seeking? Maybe it was seeking back there. And I remember this time when my mother, who rarely ever got sick, was sick one time. And because of that, there was, like, I was 11 or 12, and there was just these thoughts of, oh my God, what's death? I don't think she was even that sick, but for some reason, having not seen it. And there's this thing where I went outside and I was just, I didn't mean to ponder, but it was just there sitting. And I think there is an age that people go through, whether it's around there or something else, that it's like, well, why? And I remember looking up at the stars, and that just struck me that I'm gazing at something that supposedly never ends. And I can't deal with never ending. You know what I mean? It's like, how do we ever fit that in? And just for a fleeting moment, and it doesn't even make sense as I say it, but it felt like it was in a bottle. And it was like, I could almost just relax. And then it was like, but what's outside the bottle? And that kind of spun me out into the world of, sex, drugs, rock and roll, living in an ashram for a few years, having 3 kids by the age of 28, running businesses and just juggling life, but also squeezing, trying to find maybe that. And I've said in other things, when you realize that a lot of it is those times that you're doing something exciting. When I bungee jumped, I wasn't thinking. When I surf and I'm dropping down a wave, I'm not thinking. I'm so much in that moment that life is there. And, you can then become a thrill seeker just to get those type of things. When you fall in love, your thoughts are centered so much, everything there. So somehow I guess I'm a person that just enjoys that sense of being centered in the moment. And that's why I ended up in the ashram. And I've got a meditation practice that I've been doing pretty much since I was 19. Before that, I was doing yoga. So, but I'm also a man of extreme. You know, I don't mind a bottle of wine, and, you know, a good party always goes well, and the rest of it. So, I don't know who I am in many ways. All I know is that there is this thing that I've got that is a gift, that is this life. And every time I come back to the terms of the gratitude and the opportunity to just be able to live in this, then it's
You
great. And whatever's going on is okay.
you describe it, being within a bottle and being contained. Yet you talk about living in a life all around you.
Mm.
Are you a little bit risk adverse because you have, edges to the bottle? Because, we know in Kabbalistic thought, the soul lives in a vessel. And it's that vessel which is a human representation on this earth. So do you still feel quite confined in your life?
The bottle example was specifically that it gave me a sense of comfort, but then I thought
Ah,
outside the bottle. So it wasn't, so I could still take that question, because I perceive my insecurities at times, and sometimes they may be those. But with everything, it's also whatever I perceive or I become aware of. So I like to have little sayings because they give me a point of reference. So
Yeah.
I'm currently working and sitting with one that at a point, when you have, and I'll call it a realization, something bubbles up or you're in a conversation and, even in a conversation that you're not even sure if you're the one saying it or someone else is, and it doesn't matter because what is being said is so rich that it keeps coming. There's a thing
so
that I
yeah.
play with, which is awareness, choice, and practice. So you become aware and you make a choice and you practice, but you practice from where you are, not from where you want to be. So if I want to be a black belt, as an example, but I'm a white belt with a little yellow tag, then I practice from there. So when I see, my insecurity bubble up or any of those things, it's what I'm aware of it. So what's my choice is to just step a little bit further into it, into whatever that may be, and practice. But not again, not out here where my practice doesn't accomplish, doesn't, and maybe it's accomplishing stuff, but it seems so far away. And I think for a long time I tried to be a black belt, and it was like you just get pushed around by life. But this little bit that a little bit closer seems to make sense. And I don't know if that answered anything or I went off on another tangent, but that's kind of where I go anyway. So
We quite like your tangents, but it's
Mm.
I think one of the things that's really interesting and the benefit of doing what we're doing actually is that is what a real conversation is. We do go on tangents. We do meander. It's like walking through a forest. Like one minute you're here, one minute you're there, and you're looking at a completely different thing. I think the beauty of nature is the constant difference that we get to see, the light coming through the trees. You get to see, once you're in a damp space, you're in a damp grass space, the light is completely different. This is what conversation is. It's light and shade.
I was just out with, you've met Ellaway. We're in the
Yeah,
national
love Illinois, gorgeous.
because it was her birthday the day before, 4th of
Oh,
birthday. So we're out in this national park and there's so many flowers, and because she has a knowledge of things, we kept stopping and taking little videos of her explaining what all of these flowers are and everything. And it's exactly like that. You're just wandering around. And I love nothing more than that sense of curiosity, slipping down and looking at a plant that's just, I mean, that's the awe and wonder, and that's if you could just get people out and just for a moment get them looking at the beauty that exists there, then the more we actually look at the beauty, the more I think we see the beauty as well. But
well, and just we're so much more grounded. Like the beauty of the healing beauty of nature. which of course, which we're part of. I mean,
Mm.
that's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we often seem to this siloed living that I was, referring to at the beginning is man-made. We've created that. We've created this place. Ironically, we've created a little bottle for ourselves to live in, and we have talked about this sort of on the podcast before. This building of fences around ourselves in order to feel safe, because whatever's going on is actually quite confronting for us for whatever reason, and we are being barraged quite significantly by constant media misinformation, disinformation, but just a lot, just too much information consistently that I think we've decided that if we actually build this castle, then we're nice and safe. But actually going out and breathing fresh air and putting our feet on the ground. And I live opposite the beach
Mm.
down here, and to take my Henry, my dog, down the beach and throw a stick into the water and just feel grounded, to
Oh,
actually physically be feeling grounded is just so healing. So healing. And I notice when I'm not. I know I can feel it in myself. Danny will always attest to the body being that organism that's part of the living biosystem and ecosystem that we currently reside in. So it's quite an interesting feeling, that ebbing and flowing, which is back to that nature walk that we just talked about that you've taken with Eloise, the
mm.
beauty of new life, the beauty of the things that surround us, and the beauty of the relationships that we have. The connection of those things are so important. Can I ask you, then, you as we tend to when we live in our own journey, we can kind of package it up as a story, because it's an easier way to actually have the conversation with a group of strangers. What I'm really interested in is, what do you think the the parts of you that came together to create the CEO of Weleda? Like, how did you go from the kid at 11 sitting, looking at or addressing your own fears, going outside into the dark, looking at the stars, really realizing that there's a never-ending story here, but that there's a fear of an ending with your mother? How does that kid go sex, drugs, rock and roll, party, fun, explore, is what I'm taking from that. Like the really just grabbing life by the shirt collar and just going for it. How did that translate into, like a post-industrial job and I'm not saying, I mean, you and I both come from the personal care and health industries, as does Danny. So it's kind of interesting to me that you went through this journey and found yourself the leader of a group of people who, clearly needed a leader. Like, what if you were able to kind of strip back everything? What is it? What's the essence of that?
Don't know.
Thought about it?
But the thing in there is, there's definitely curiosity of whether something can be done in a better way than it has been done before.
Yeah.
And that, whether that's instilled from my mother or whatever else, it's always that questioning. And so I just started working in the health industry. And, I was there when there was no bottled water in Australia. The
Yeah,
only
yeah,
bottled
yeah.
water was, you would go into a supermarket, no, not a supermarket, a hardware store to buy water to put in the battery of a car. And when fluoride came in, I worked with the guy that brought in water purifiers, and people had come in and do that. So I was just, there's great fortune in there. And also when I was in the ashram, we had events that would be 1,200 vegetarians for 3 days, and they needed someone to coordinate all of that. And you volunteer, and all of a sudden I'm the one that's running the whole thing. Now, why was I the one running the whole thing? Probably because I put my hand up and I don't give in. when there's something there, if there's something to be done, which is probably why I ended up representing the industry with government and talking with, Tony Abbott and Christopher Pyne and all the politicians, because I would listen to what they said, probably better than a lot of people may be able to, but I wouldn't back down if I didn't agree with them. And I, I still exist with my own imposter syndrome as well, because it's like, am I making it all up? But I love learning now. Like, I left school when I was 16. I went surfing down to Bells, living in a van, and I never went, I couldn't hear the school bell from Bells because I went to school in Randwick. So that made it really hard. But I wasn't there much of the time beforehand. And I actually perceive a benefit that the lessons I learned was how to survive in this world in a meaningful way, how to open up to things, how to listen and how to learn. For the first few years, I sat with grammar for dummies or, business letters for dummies every time I would have to go to type something. And it meant that I also, in a way, knew that others knew more than I did, but I was good at making sure that it got done. So I work with people. Nearly everywhere I've worked, they've all known more than I know. All I know is how to help them be better at being themselves in the way that enables them to grow and prospers the business. And the more you respect, so I worked in the warehouses. I've pulled them. I've dismantled warehouses and put them back together with all of the chaos of the bags of rice and everything else, so that it's in an organized fashion. And then when anyone else comes in to do that, I feel for them. I've been out on the road, so I feel for them. I've been behind the counter in many health food stores. Mine was called Rainbow Health Foods a long time ago. So I know what it's like within that frame of reference enough to be able to not just to totally respect them and trust their judgment in those places better than I trust my own. And I feel that somewhere within that, people recognize things. I continue to get surprised a lot of the time within that. Even, people asking me to do things now, I still question what I'm doing, but I'm not going to limit myself by my perceptions. I'm going to keep stepping forward. And every time I do, I'm fine. I related with someone recently, and you may have seen it if you saw that other interview, this thing where I had this at school at one time. I got totally embarrassed. I mean, to the point that the room shrunk in and
Mhm.
there was just giggling, I couldn't, the words on the page danced. I could not follow, I couldn't read them. I could read, but they were all over. And then I avoided speaking in front of people more than 2 or 3 for many years. Even when I was managing businesses, I would organize it in a way that I didn't have to. So, is that a disability or something? Is that a whatever else? But you find other ways. And then when you can see that in yourself, you can see that in other people. So your
Yeah.
perception of other people has, I don't see a limitation in others. I see an opportunity. And I also see that same child that looks up at the stars in everybody, that they exist, And when you were saying about covering ourselves up, in a way, I feel sometimes all we want is love.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get hurt, so we put little barriers so we don't get hurt. And the more we put barriers, the less we can feel the love, and the more barriers we put until we kind of cover ourselves. And then when we start to open up, there's this fear that if I take the barrier away, I'll feel the pain, because not feeling pain is closer to feeling love or closer to feeling something. But as you take them away, it's again this little warning beacon that exists at the top here that has only its main job is to tell us what could go wrong. The rest of us knows so much more, but it just continues to tell us. And if we listen to that, then we're caught in that spiral. But when you take it off, hey, this isn't that bad. when I speak in front of people, I still am nervous until I step out. But when I step out, it's okay. It's all okay. And the more we can bring ourselves into it's okay, the more we accept who we are in an authentic and genuine way, the more, as you say, we connect. We're back where we need to be.
Yeah.
As humans living in connection in a society in the most beautiful world, and then we won't leave people behind like we are now. We won't be doing those things because we will perceive that how could someone else suffer if I have the ability to do something? And right now we're struggling to work out how that is. I think
All
I'll
day.
do another
Okay.
tangent,
You
but
wanna
does that
say
answer
something?
part of that?
No, I love as I said, no rules here. You can tangent the shit out of it. Go right ahead,
So,
Dad.
so what I'm trying to break down or work out is your belief system and your deep feeling of how you were to how you work through this life of yours. And you could have done this anywhere. Doesn't have to be Weleda. It could have been in any other position, any other company. And it feels as if it's about the people, and it's about trying to understand how to find their love. How can they, find the love in themselves to be able to be the best as they can be. As what you're trying to do, you deep dived into the ashram. You had all these inspirational moments. But you came down to the fact that actually, if I love myself and I'm able not just to love myself from an innie, but also to love myself as an outie, then other people will have the respect to go, okay, I can be the best of my ability around you. And therefore I can then, create ideas and pathways which can allow this business to grow. So to me, it feels like just the deep feeling of seated love that I'm not trying to be wishy-washy here in a way or ethereal, but it comes down to love and respect, which is sort of like your foundations of your journey.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm a tough businessman if you need to negotiate or if you need
Are
to
you?
do if you need to do any of those things, because that's a role. It's just another
Yeah,
game.
absolutely. But you've
Um,
used what you've got.
Yeah,
but
but
I
David, isn't
will make sure no one else, I will do it fairly and equitably. And therefore, I would say my reputation within the industry is if I say something, it is what I will do. Or, so the, I, again, I don't understand. It seems so bloody simple in so many ways, to run businesses effectively with people in them to bring the trust. Now, the thing is that you're bringing people in from a world where they don't trust. So, for us in Weleda, we put them through mindfulness. We did things with Brené Brown's stuff. We
So
then did it.
you did it,
We
not
bought.
Weleda. Came from you.
Well, Weleda paid for it, So,
yeah, but that's I think the point, and I think the point that Danny is making is that, you know, interestingly enough, we had not planned to talk about a leadership role with you, but actually look at where we are, because I think what I'm hearing is self-leadership and the ability to be a self-leader, the ability to trust yourself, to care about yourself, to witness yourself, to allow yourself to also practice a level of non-attachment to the outcome, because that is what has to happen when you're in leadership. The ability to actually run a company and work with humans, because that's what you're doing. You're never working. No business actually happens on its own. It happens as a consequence of the collective, which is our community. And we spend, 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day with those people, probably more than we do our own families often. So I hear you. And I think what's really interesting to me is that this just confirms for me that we are a multifaceted thing. as a human. And we can feel hope, joy, fear, and sadness all at the same time. It may be confusing, but we feel it. Your shadow side is part of you. Who you show yourself to be is part of you. And who you choose to be with those people is also part of you, and a choice that you make, which is going back to your practice of making a choice. You know that you want to be the black belt, but you've got to be practicing from the white belt. So because you're where you are, and for me that is being present. Like for me, my observation of what you're talking about is presence, and being really authentically yourself is a great place to be, because it's actually quite frightening sometimes to be your most authentic self. Having said that, what I find interesting, knowing you as little as I do, although feeling like I've known you for years, is this really interesting, meandering river that is your life, now taking you out of that management role of organisations, coming into partnerships with people like Jess Scully, with the ability to be working in organisations and taking, your bag of tricks, your backpack of learnings into those organisations, and bringing with it also one of Danny's and my most favourite teachers, Nora Bateson, and bringing in warm data. And for those people who are unaware of what warm data is, we will make sure that we actually put that into the show notes so that you can have a look at it. But I think I'd like to know and understand from you how MBE obviously was the next step after you'd finished doing what you'd been doing at a senior level as an executive. You come into MBE, and I think we're all the same. We've actually all done the MBE. So for whatever reasons, we've chosen this place where our values have clearly sort of aligned. And now warm data is in your life. So what does warm data mean to you?
I'm going to try and weave some of those together, which is a
Please.
very warm data way of doing things. For me, I left Weleda specifically at a time where they loved me. I was earning money. The business was doing well, because and it was a wonderful business to be within, because it gave you the opportunity to do good in the world. Where they grow things, how they do it. The fact that Rudolf Steiner set the whole business up, and he did it in a way that was just really from our saying was in harmony with nature and the human being. That's
Beautiful.
the one that exists there. I just feel that there's more that needs to be done within the world to be able to be of service in some ways. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to make sure that I'm doing all right somehow within it all. But it really is, there's such an opportunity to be able to step out. So when I step out, I went, what is it that I can do? So one of the things that I did at the end of the MBE, the 5-minute presentation that you have to do.
Yes.
This is David Johnston from Radio JOI, bringing you the news Beyond Tomorrow. And now that's became the name of my business, Beyond Tomorrow Co. And it was, no child, the education minister has announced today that no child will have to do mandatory homework, and 70% of all education needs to be in the outside of the classroom atmosphere, all of that sort of stuff, And then I created the Purpose Chair, which I've...
Have you got the Purpose Chair there? Oh, perfect. We were hoping you would have we're really interested in the Purpose Chair.
The Purpose is... So then from there I'm going... I ended up doing Beyond Tomorrow Co. because the MBE forces you to, in essence, to have a context of why you're doing things.
Yep.
And my context was, I'm just stepping out and I don't know. But then I went, well, I'll make a consultancy business. And therefore I could put that as the context to go through all of the different exercises, which was beautiful. And my website really reflects just the things that we did through the MBE.
So you planted your own garden?
I did plant my own garden. And if you read on my website, for many years, I've always used gardening as an analogy for business. It is the best.
I might have known that.
Yeah, it's there totally. It's everything's open source. Because everything that you do, you've got to have a picture of what the garden's going to be. You've got to do the compost. You've got to pull the weeds. And you've got to be doing all of these things on a regular basis, just like a business. If you want to put in a whole new garden bed, you can, but don't neglect the little ones that you've already got going.
Yeah.
Don't blame the lettuce.
Don't blame the that's actually it there. I pinched that one as well. So, when
I thought it sounded too good.
I do come from Viking stock, I think. Anyway, when I whenever I go into a business, it's always standing back, then getting close, then standing back, then understanding the people and everything else. So I did that with what's the world need now, as far as I could tell. It needs connection. It needs loosening up of our perspectives.
Yeah.
It needs the ability for more human input into decision-making things, and it needs to be able to hold things so that no one's totally satisfied, but everyone's willing to give it a go. And all of the weaving of the Warm Data Lab, which it's as the beauty of connecting people through questions with different contexts, brings about an opening of the way we consider things. So I may have an opinion, but it doesn't mean that it's right. And if I listen to someone else, then I may be able to open up and learn that a little bit more, because the more I'm giving you my opinion, the less I'm hearing from you. And if I want to be the beneficiary of something, then I need to listen more.
Sympathy, my friend.
Exactly. And then with the Jess Scully and Radical Exchange and everything that you would have seen when you came to the last Wisdom and Action Forum with Audrey Tang, what she was able to accomplish, you start looking at some of these things and you go, this makes sense. I mean, the one that I really liked about Radical Exchange, and I'm going to give an example because I think it works well.
And we must put that in the show notes for people. Radical Exchange, we must make sure that we point people to Radical Exchange.
Because we're just starting in Australia, but there's many beautiful things happening all around the world. But the one I like, and I'm trying to give an example, is if we were trying to make a decision on, say, a data center somewhere, for example, and there are a lot of different people's opinions. So you could put those opinions up and you'd have 3 or 4 different ones. And then you give everyone 100 points. And if you like that opinion, you use 1 point. But if you want to put 2 points on there, you're using up 5 of the 2 votes on there, you're using up 5 of your points. If you want to put 3, you're using up 12 of your points. So the more you weight it, the less you get. But people can come along and go, oh, I like that statement, but I'm going to change it a little bit and make this statement. So you can make your own statements. And all of a sudden you're getting different statements that people are able to vote on, and you get within the whole realm a way of consent of what people are in the general population agree on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're using warm data. There's an overlay of warm data.
Exactly.
So that's so the weave effectively is, if we were to take a bird's eye view of what the subject maybe was, and there was a whole lot of us that wanted to be really interactive into this, we could weave our own stories, which creates that transcontextualization, which is another lovely, Nora, big word that really means connection. That really means storytelling through connection and the overlay of all of our stories. But we end up creating a consensus, which is so much more creative and so much more productive than to make a decision that our opinion is our only opinion. We are unwilling to see anybody else's opinion, but which means that there's like this barrier toward toward consensus and toward community and toward belonging and toward all of the good stuff, like the composting you're talking about, the ability for growth to take place.
Yeah. And you start to get, if you don't do that, what we're getting is people in opposition.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you start to defend your position, where instead you're finding a way of, and again, it's not consensus, it's consent almost. It's like, where,
Okay, better word. Yeah. Yeah, I hear
where
you.
is that thing that can be held with, some tension, but it's good enough to be able to go forward in. And decisions can get made faster, fairer.
You can go
be more-
across a tensioned bridge, can't you? If the bridge is, it's a way to bridge.
Yeah. So it's so again, if I was looking at business, I look at where am I going to get the most, effort for benefit? Where can you put in a certain amount of effort to get the greatest benefit? So I came out going, where can I do something meaningful in the world while I'm still ensuring that I'm enjoying my life in a meaningful way? And I came up with doing the purpose chair, doing the warm data, doing the radical exchange, writing a book, and doing some workshops with my LOA that we'll
In
be
your
doing.
spare time, just in your spare time.
Well,
It's all
and every
it's
now
all
and then
very
I
good.
get a client and I earn a little bit of money, but most of the time I'm going, I'm sorry, I'm too busy to be able to do it. So I only take on 1 or 2 people at a time, so that I can give them the attention they need. And um, and only if it seems really interesting, I think I can do something. Danny?
It's all very good to hear this. I really like the excitement and the enthusiasm behind something which is there for the open-minded. My thoughts are, though, that we're talking about a very small minority of people, and for them to try and change their way of rationally understanding how to help themselves see the future and be supported with a change of mind. How do you think we can enable it to go a little bit more mycelium and grow further and give us more hope that this this movement will grow?
I love
Yeah.
And
Well,
just
every
one other question.
There you go.
And then what do you think with all this is what we need to hear?
Yeah. So
I don't
one,
need answers.
I really love this, because again, it's this thing of the uncommon ground and trying to find something that can exist in there. So I'm more about the potential of emerging than necessarily trying to patch everything together.
Yeah.
So when different things happen, people are looking for something that gives them, perturbation. Everything's perturbed. They're looking for something that has been trialed and has been working and has been shown to be doing things. So in some ways, I'm not trying to go, oh, everyone come over here, this will work. Although I know with the Warm Data Lab, if I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks, and there's about 40 or 50 people, very small number, coming there.
Beautiful.
But they'll
We
come.
need to know about these things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in Sydney. So they'll come, and a lot of them will be, can I say, on a continuum on the aware kind of side.
Yeah. Of course you
That'll
can.
be
Because
fine.
only those people will
I
be there.
know that warm data could go further back into the people that have that more fear and insecurity in holding things. And once you do, and I have this thing of just loosening them up. The thing with the Warm Data Lab that I really like, when you can move it back into that continuum and where the people are maybe a little bit stiffer and a little bit more opinionated, is once you've got a question and various contexts. So they move between contexts. And you may come into a context initially and go, oh, I know about success, which is the question. What is success in a changing world? I know about that through the context of politics or through the context of ecology or economy or whatever else. But when you do that and then you move it into family and then you move it into spirituality or religion, you see the similar things, but you kind of are perceiving it in a different angle. And when people are talking from their experience or from their story, and their story sounds engaging, and they'll say something and that'll trigger off a thought that they had when they viewed something, not an opinion, but a thought that may have done something, they start to open up to it. And then you couple that with something like radical exchange, where all of a sudden they see in, an issue that, and I'll use the Taiwanese one where there was Uber drivers came in, taxi drivers, no one, they were opposing, but then they found by questioning what it was that they all wanted, that was a uncommon, but then common ground that they all wanted. They all wanted to make sure it was safe. They want to make sure it was easy. They want to make sure everyone was paid fair, that there was, all of those things. So then you take the focus out of what are we arguing about and what are we working towards, and you get a proposition that people go, well, this all works. Because so much of the time where they're going, well, that doesn't make sense. What about if we did this? What about if we did that? But we haven't got the power to do that. But we can find a way that we can have the power to be able to do a lot of that. So where we are now is everything's made up. Everything that we've got, the economy, the education, the way we do business, the religions, everything has come from a concept that someone has put together.
100%.
Good as bad. We can just create other ones.
Which is the opportunity.
Totally. So everything, you go into a business to look at what it needs, and people are going, oh, yeah, but we got all of this competition. Fantastic. How do we turn that around from something that's demoralizing and crippling us into something that's really worthwhile? What is it that they do that we don't do? What is it that we could be doing? What is it that, businesses really are about people.
But they're only about people.
Yeah. And when you ask those questions, why do you do this, or for your family, that or the why, you always get back to so that I enjoy my life in a meaningful way or something. So start with what that is, and then the rest will come. Did that answer anything, Danny? Or
No, I think it just says to me, we're always challenging and we're always developing our thoughts to create a more understandable, sustainable environment that we can live in as best as we can. But it doesn't always work like that.
I agree. And I also think we're in a really, and every era says this, a really interesting time.
I agree.
Because the world has been dominated for the last couple of 100 years, but building up more and more by what's called the left hemisphere thinking. Put it in box. How can we analyze that? How can we do this? How can we take this system and convert it so it does these things, and we can measure it and we can look at it, very cold data type of stuff. That suppressed the intuition, the instinct, the natural gut feeling. Indeed, they used to kill them if you had too much gut feeling, because they call them witches or whatever else. But these days, those things are coming back very strong. There is more heart, more gut going on about things than ever before. I was listening to this Indigenous guy recently on in a book that I'm reading, so I was listening through that. And he said that he'd kept someone out of the education system so they learn this gut thing before they learn this. And it just struck me. Imagine if our education brought that sense of how, that real intuitive thing. before we brought it into how do we divide it up, we brought it into how do
Well,
we.
this is what I found, in my field. No one really feels before they speak, or no one really, gets to understand their body. They don't understand where they're breathing from. They don't understand why their body's, causing all the problems. Is because they don't sit and they don't reflect and they don't feel. And they think that they can just jump about and keep going, Christine, don't they? Without having a reflection on them. And, a lot of the work I've done recently is about actually sitting people down, making them understand that they actually can feel emotion and feel how they feel in their bodies before they jump. And therefore removing the sort of like the man of action into more of a man of feel, or person of action, into more of a person of feeling and then action. So we can then actually understand where our true intuition is, and we can actually move forward with great intent with our heart, head, and our body. So yeah, I agree with you. We are definitely transcending into that, because people are becoming far too caught up with emotion, not enough emotional intelligence, and therefore making mistakes physically and mentally and emotionally. So I totally agree with you.
Can I share a little story with you both and get your feedback on it, because it's interesting. We all three have very similar beliefs and values, as clearly, and which is what leads us to this ability to have this conversation. But not everybody is us, right? Which is back to what Danny was talking about. So I went to a lunch yesterday. I talked to Danny about this last night. I went to a lunch to celebrate my aunt's 98th birthday. She's a very physically fit woman. She still drives her car. She plays no, she doesn't play lawn bowls anymore. She plays carpet bowls. She's got a really strong community around her. Goes out on a Tuesday with her group, her mates, and her mates are about 20 years younger than she is. She's got grandchildren and great-grandchildren living in her house with her. She's been very open-minded about the way that she's lived her life, in that her early life was quite seriously sweeping a dirt floor and riding a horse to school, and also not having a long education because she was a woman, and so she wasn't education wasn't important. What was important was that she could do home duties, milk cows, and make sure that the boys were looked after. Right? So this is a woman who has lived through so much change, so much change. And we were talking about this stuff yesterday. It was so much fun. I had so much fun sitting with them, because I was sitting with a whole group of individuals who come from completely demographics to me. So I come from, I've got a pretty educated background, and I've been very fortunate. And there's been difficulty, but I've been fortunate. They've had difficulty, and they've also been fortunate, but in very different ways. So some of them had different educational standards to me. You might have been 10 or 15 years older than me, but there was about 6 or 7 of us sitting around having a conversation about this business, this pollination media, and what it is that we are all as a group trying to achieve individually and together, all specifically around community. What was really interesting for me was that 98-year-old woman said to me, "You wouldn't have kids now, would you? You wouldn't have children in this awful world." And I said, "Why? Why? What do you mean? Why?" And I said, "My kids want to have kids." And she said, "Wow, it's dreadful." And then somebody else opposite me said, "Yeah, I agree. There's no way that I'd have kids. If I was to do it over, I wouldn't do it." And then somebody else said, "Well, I would." And it was a really interesting conversation. At what point there was one point where they were talking about the fact that they don't trust their government, they don't trust their neighbours, they don't trust themselves. They don't it was quite an interesting chat, particularly when you consider that what we're talking about is how do we invite people into our community who don't necessarily believe what we do and make space. And you've spoken about, which I really love, the loosening up of people's beliefs. And you kind of do the loosening up means that I'm assuming that, that there's, by doing that, the firmness of their desire to stand hard on what it is that they believe and their unwillingness to see, somebody else's perspective. What I found really interesting with these people was that when we started talking about the things that we shared in terms of belief, because I didn't necessarily believe what they believed, and they didn't necessarily believe what I believed. But when we started talking about what mattered to them, and what mattered to them was community, was their family, was the coming together, was the celebration of sitting together and eating together and talking and connecting here, here, and here, and the fact that there was this kind of overarching lack of trust that they were walking around with, almost like they put it on as a coat as they go out every single day. Well, you can't trust your government, you can't trust them. I don't want to get to know the neighbour. You can't trust them. This really interesting story that they're telling themselves. And the more they tell themselves clearly, the more they believe it. So I guess my question is, going back to the invitation that we want to bring people into this conversation and recognize that they are where they are and we are where we are, but we actually do have more that combines us, brings us together than more than separates us. There's a real truth to that. How do we come together, invite them in, allow them to continue to, because they've got to be able to believe what they want to believe too, without judgment. How do we hold the plurality? How do we hold the complexity? And I guess hold hands moving forward rather than hoping it will change. So moving from the wisdom to the action.
It's not our job. It's a bit to change people.
No, I agree.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I've spent a lot of time feeling that I'm out here to do that, and I'm not.
Mm.
Why should I? Why should anyone? I have struggle with me, but what I can do is tell my story, and I can be as open and honest as I can with that, and I can practice and see where that goes, and that has an intrigueness for people because there's fear and insecurity, and it doesn't really exist to the extent that people have it, but it's kind of just beating on itself. But every now and then people put their head up and go, "Oh my God, there's some fresh air here." And they go for a walk in nature and they have a conversation and they open up to something. And all we can do is offer. We can run warm data labs. We can do radical exchange. We can show those things. And that again is part of that emerging. It takes a lot of shit to make great compost, but out of that compost, something I believe is possible. So,
Yeah.
you know, I used to do battle with my brother-in-law that just perpetually called me a tree hugger when I I feel I got a reasonable balance, but now I don't want to argue with him. I actually want to understand a little bit why he has that perspective. And I was with someone the other day that was brought up in an evangelical, Christian religion. And she's kind of come through a lot and is trying to really love nature. But every time I would talk about the awe and wonder, she'd go, I have to go through a filter to be able to open up to understand that. And at first I went, that's ridiculous. But the more I get it, we have had so many filters placed upon us, so many layers that we've covered over when we just want to feel love, that it takes courage to be able to step out. And, we've been fortunate or, for some of us tripped over so many times that we've kind of stood up and it's like, oh, I guess I can keep going, whatever it is, that I see others coming only when we just keep moving in the direction and it is attractive enough and we show that there are certain things. and people open up enough to come and try something, and you have those conversations. And the mycelium from your conversation is magic, and I'm seeing it everywhere.
Mm.
People say, "Oh, this was such a great conversation, but this can't go on." And it's like everywhere you go, there's this conversation. Everywhere I go, because I can't engage otherwise. Danny, you want to say something? I can see it.
He does that.
You talk about attractive enough, and I
Oh, yeah.
find this, about it has to be attractive, and people will be drawn to it. And then I think about MAGA, and I think about Trump, and I think about the other large organizations which have all got all the bells and whistles and have got all the social attach. And to you, me, I don't know, to Christine, they're not that attractive. But to a large population of people, it is attractive. So I'm having this concept of being attractive. I think to me it's not attractive because
But you're
I think
saying
it's
that in the true sense of the word, aren't you? It attracts. You're using the word as in attracts.
For me, if I see authenticity, I'm attracted
yeah,
to it.
I think
Yeah.
I think authenticity is probably another
Yes.
authenticity to you. And I know we're using words now, but I agree with you. I 100% agree with you, but I'm trying to, find ideas, and maybe it's not for me, of how I navigate, or how we can navigate through the complexity, and, push away those attractive
Populist movements.
populist movements, which may not have the right, the most important direction for the good society.
Yeah. And I agree. Words are always such a battle to be able to. I remember using sustainability for the first time when we were creating something, and it was like, what is that? And then find what it is, and people go, oh yeah, that sounds good. And now we're at like sustainability. No, we want regenerative. So words come and they go, and it's we'll continue to play and see if we can find the right
But
one.
it's
But these other things are attracting people, and they're attracting them because people are looking, and they're hearing. What they're hearing is, if I wanted to be popular, I will find everything to complain about, because then I'm popular with everyone else that wants to complain about things, because the easiest thing to find is something to find something wrong in.
agreed.
When you find something right in it, you almost have to defend why there is a benefit in it. And it's such a really weird thing in society that we've allowed ourselves to get into this. So we're in this realm. So, and it's funny, I was going to say in this spiral. So with Weleda, we also did spiral dynamics. So that there's the Lalu one of the spiral dynamics, but there's also the Greaves, which was there beforehand. And why I like the combination, but probably more the Greaves, is that it has other elements that aren't in the Lalu one, and it lays things up to a degree. And it also goes from individual to collective to individual to collective to individual. So and whenever there's a change happening, it's like the tides change. Wherever it was in the spiral at first, digs their heels in because they're defending the position that makes the most sense, as those few are starting to come over here. And it's again that thing, nothing has ever changed until those few build up the momentum enough and others start to see it. I mean, we now, the vast majority of society in Australia, will look at the fact that women couldn't vote, that we were incarcerating people as slaves in Australia, that all of these things that now we look at and go, that's strange that that my mother was told by her doctor to take up smoking because it would calm her nerves. You know, we are in a state of change. And the things that we're doing now that maybe we're viewing and going, that's so strange, we will step out in a number of years, people will look back and go, you were what? How could you do that? How could you leave people on the street like that? How could you not make sure there was enough food? You know, how could you allow these things to happen? Because the book I'm writing, I shouldn't say this, but I will,
You
is
should.
my great granddaughter. I've given her a name. I'm writing a series of letters. And it's basically saying, I'm trying my best. It's not good enough. I'm perceiving that you are in a world that is beautiful. Not perfect, not, you know, cumulus clouds and you're floating on them. Still stuff that you got to go through, but you have come through, and there is a evolutionary process that has brought consciousness, the last frontier of human evolution, that we actually are seeing that we're not the most important thing here, that we are just part of it, and realize that we are, what is it, 50% or 45% bacteria? You know, we live because things exist in us that are living with things living in them. You know, we're just part of the rhythm of all of this flowing in such a beautiful, natural way. There's so many bits that you play with in there, isn't there?
It's interesting. I had this one question that I wanted to ask you to finish on, which you have with the universe has led us here. Effectively, and it was to say that if you could leave one idea with future generations about navigating complexity, what would it be? And you've told us you're writing a book to future generations, and I think that's truly beautiful. And I've loved the meandering stream that we've wandered through today, and we've talked about the intertwining of business. We've talked about the journey of the self, of the other, and the weaving of all of our complex ideas and thoughts, and the ability to allow people to be themselves and to come along should they choose, rather than feeling like we're going to drag them in and drag them kicking and screaming. And I think that with some level of subtlety, what we've actually also talked about is the need for humans to belong, to be part of something. We want to belong. We want to be in a tribe. We want to find our place within that ecosystem and within that biodiversity. And we want that. We yearn for that, I think, that connection, because it's what feeds us. It nourishes us and we nourish others. This is the beautiful ebb and flow of what it is that we're talking about. And out of that comes health, comes, and I mean physical health. Like our entire system works better when we are joyful, when we are connected, when we are grounded, when our feet are planted and the roots grow and the sun shines on us and we get some water and all of the goodness of and someone comes and composts at our feet so that we can actually do all of the things that we're doing. And the one thing that I love about the conversation that we've had, for me, that I will take from this, apart from your willingness to be as open and honest and really truly present in this conversation, which we thank you for, David, is how important it is for us to continue to have these conversations, to pollinate, pardon the pun, the world that we're living in with these beautiful, because if people know what they know until they know differently. And we have the opportunity to invite people, to the garden, and come and enjoy the opportunities of these sorts of conversations with one another. and work through it and hear what others have to say. So we've covered warm data. Thank you, Nora. We've covered, and Gregory and everybody who came before them. We clearly have multiple inputs that we all bring to this conversation and our own journeys which intertwine. And we hope you'll come back and talk to us again so you can tell us more about what's happening with radical exchange and talk to us about your warm data and how that's going for you in Sydney. We'll make sure we put it in the show notes. And the Purpose Chair, please make sure you get to David's website. We'll make sure that we put your website into the show notes as well. And because I think delving into the Purpose Chair in another chat would be brilliant as well. We hope we'll see you in a summer gathering. I'll see you before then. But I think that's all from the Water Talks. And I think I want to thank you, Danny, and I want to thank you, David.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed myself.
Thanks, David.